Hi, I'm Britt Haddix, and I'm a mother, an active duty military wife, an advocate for military families, and the creator of Seems Like a Protest. This is a mixed media series using yarn, quilting scraps, handmade papers, and weaving as the primary technique. The work exposes a reoccurring cycle in America where, in times of crisis, women are called to action, and when the crisis ends, they're kind of pushed back into traditional roles. It's something America repeatedly keeps demanding of women, expecting us to hold it together at its worst and not giving them lasting power or authority at its best. American women have been revolutionaries, suffragettes, and vigilantes. We've seen this since the American Revolution, both taking up arms and acting as spies, and more socio-politically overthrowing systems of power and law that have held them back. When the men were on the front lines or taking part in shaping America's democracy, as we know it today, women were managing homes, businesses, farms, ensuring food production didn't fail during the conflict, and inevitably became a duty husband, where they took on the actual legal and financial roles that their husbands once played. And then we saw it again during the Civil War era, where women were able to actually make a massive shift into the professional and industrial workforces. At the time, nursing was a male dominated field, and inevitably, women were pulled into those positions because men were on the front lines, again, fighting another war, as they do. They really stepped into clerical positions and started running the government behind the scenes, and also worked within the Treasury and the postal departments to keep things going. And then finally, in the North and the South, women managed agricultural output, again, to make sure that our children and our soldiers had food while they were doing all of the things that were necessary at the time. We saw this again, as I said, it is a cycle, during World War I and World War II. During the First World War, America didn't have a big role. They were only involved for a couple of years, but women ended up moving into positions, working switchboards and keeping communications between the front lines and headquarters going, which formed the Signal Corps. They were essentially the backbone of communication during World War II. This was also the era when they entered factories. We saw that more during World War II. They began running things on the home front, and you might recall Rosie the Riveter. They really played a big role in keeping our ammunition and all of our equipment going out to the front lines. This is also the era that we coined the term solo parent, something I'm all too familiar with. So then what happened next? There's been a tug of war between independence we earned during these conflicts and pressure to return back to normal. Each time the residual progress women had made acted as fuel for the next wave of progress, even if we didn't see it right away. After the revolution, women gained access to education. They had proven themselves as capable learners when they, on a whim, had to suddenly manage whole households, businesses, and farms. After the Civil War, women gained access to the public workforce. After the Civil War, women gained access to the public workforce. They took up nursing and clerical jobs, which inevitably became feminized. We, even today, see most nurses are women, and most clerical jobs within our government are women as well. And then after World War I, there was the Great Disillusionment, which rather aggressively pushed women back into their roles. Women have been stuck in this pattern of progress versus reversion for 250 years, which begs the question, did we ever stop being revolutionaries, suffragettes, and vigilantes? I don't think so. The finish line for things like voting rights, pay, equality, and access to our reproductive health care it always seems to move just as we reach it. And so even though the 19th Amendment is a century old, the act of being a suffragette, working for that unhindered right to vote, is something that we are still doing today as we see voting legislation roll through Congress right now. In many ways, the seam of that original protest is still being sown today. The artwork isn't only a matter of history, it's a continuous effort of vigilance to make sure that we are promised the representation that matches our lived realities. 2025 felt like a year when women finally started to take notice of this reversion. We've always noticed that, we get our independence and then there's like, okay, go back. But this year, I've noticed that so many women don't want to do that. It was an uncomfortable year for me. It was full of big feelings, often negative ones, but I took it all out on my loom. Seems like a protest was created in celebration of Women's History Month, as executive orders pushed diversity, equity, and inclusion kind of backwards. The works meet more policies and changes, such as book bans, with declarations that women's histories, labor, and rights don't require permission to exist. Women today know freedoms that generations before us were denied, and I think at this point in time, because we live in a time where there are multiple generations living, it's going to be really hard to push us back. The knowledge spans across so many generations, and it comes with a shared responsibility to hold the line, like those before us, for those after us. With DEI executive orders came book bans. These often disproportionately impact minority communities, such as women, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and our LGBTQ communities. I call this out through an installation called This Was Never About the Books. Aside from the handmade paper, the artwork primarily includes yarn and quilting fabric. The choice of soft materials was very intentional because they are primarily used in traditional women's craft as a nod towards the domestic role that we're continuously pushed back into. The roles like glorified suburban housewife from like the 1950s through the 70s, and today the trad wife are often those roles. Like, we can see it right now happening. This trad wife trend is popping up on social media, but it's just another way of reaching 20, 30, 40-year-olds and pushing women back, making it look like the way society is supposed to operate. So the work is literally soft, but figuratively sharp. The series stemmed from the deep feelings of confusion and frustration that I had during 2025. But while making it, I found my place. I've never made protest art. I have never made folk art, or really worked with mixed media for that matter. It was definitely an experiment, but it was more so an outlet for the year. It allowed me to consider, what role do I play as a mother, as a wife, and as a member of the community? And I hope you had a chance to see it. Thank you to everybody who talked to me about it and asked questions during the opening reception. And thank you, Abby and Dundee, for hosting.